Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you for joining me and Odin again for Chapter 4 of our Modern UFOlogy Series, where we dig into events that started with the groundbreaking 2017 New York Times article that exposed the government's secret UFO programs, and it led to 3 congressional hearings that provided first-hand witnesses to extraordinary events. These witnesses, mind you, are highly credible military veterans. And today we're going to recap the September 9th, 2025 congressional hearing entitled Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. That was quite a mouthful. Now, there is so much in this hearing. It was really difficult to try to pick and choose specific topics or segments to review. The overwhelming theme of the hearing was that whistleblower protection is imperative in order to increase transparency by the government regarding the truth of what they know about UFOs and aliens. I highly recommend watching the entire hearing. It provides so much depth and context into this situation. It's just wild how much is going on and how much has been kept secret. However, more and more keeps coming out each day, folks. More first-hand witnesses, serious, credible, solid people sharing their first-hand accounts. And as always, in the description below, I provided links to other videos that will dive deeper into the stories surrounding the people involved with this hearing. I highly recommend checking out the videos below. These witnesses explain their events in much more detail. I also want to acknowledge the hard work of investigative journalists George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. They have worked tirelessly over the years to vet witnesses and help get their stories out. Without folks like them, it's very unlikely that we would even be here today. Oh, and before we dive in, really quick reminder, if you haven't already, hit that like button below and subscribe so you can get more updates to come, and post a comment in the chat. I always like to hear how you feel about these topics and of course this episode in particular. All those little things are free and easy, and it really helps the algorithm to get the message out there about our crazy reality. Okay, let's get into the witnesses. First, we have Mr. Jeff Nuccetelli. I'm really excited about this one because it happened at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is now a Space Force base, and it's very close to where I live. I've actually watched a rocket launch out there with a friend who works out there, so that was really cool. And this was the one, if you remember, that was referenced in the 2023 hearing. He has since come forward with this firsthand story, and now he's testified under oath, under the penalty of perjury and risk of prison if he lies. Let's check it out.
Between 2003 and 2005, 5 UAP incidents occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base, home to the National Missile Defense Project, a top national security priority. At the time, we were conducting launches deemed by the National Reconnaissance Office as the most important in 25 years. These were historic launches. These facilities were vital, and they were repeatedly visited by UAP. Each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. We sent information up, but we got no guidance down on how to handle these events. I personally witnessed one of these events and investigated others as they occurred. 6 other service members have provided me with the information that I will share with you today. The incursions began on October 14, 2003, when Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. After several minutes, it drifted further east onto the base and vanished over the hills. This event, now known as the Vandenberg Red Square, was referenced by Representative Luna at the first hearing on this topic. Official Air Force records of this event are in possession by Aero and the FBI. Later that night, while I was on duty, security guards at a critical launch site reported a bright, fast-moving object over the ocean. I responded to the incident. Chaos ensued over the radio as the object approached rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here." Moments later, I heard them say that it had shot off and was gone. When I arrived on scene, I talked to 5 shaken witnesses who described a massive triangular craft larger than a football field that hovered silently for about 45 seconds over their entry control point before shooting away at impossible speed. About a week later, another patrol reported a light over the ocean, behaving erratically. Believing it might be an unannounced aircraft, they declared an emergency, and an armed response force responded. Before the forces could arrive, the object descended and either landed or hovered on our flight line, and then took off again at impossible speed. The witnesses to this event were threatened and intimidated afterward. They were told to keep quiet and think about what they were reporting. After that, things did get quiet until about 2005, when another patrol reported a massive triangular craft larger than a C-130 silently floating over the installation. He watched it for a few minutes. It traveled west and disappeared into the night. And then I had my own encounter, again in 2005. I was off duty, sitting in my backyard with 2 other police officers when we noticed what first appeared to be a satellite in orbit, but it wasn't acting like a satellite. The light was strange, it was pulsing, and then it started to maneuver. It dropped in elevation. At times it would vanish from view and reappear in a different location in the sky, and eventually it reappeared 200 feet over my house. It was a 30-foot diameter sphere of light. My friends and I watched it for a moment, and then it gently accelerated and traveled up and disappeared into the stars. My next move, I went into my house after it left. I made sure no one had been abducted, and I picked up the landline. I called the Security Forces Command Center. I reported it. I requested that they give me a call back and make notifications up the chain of command. I got a call back in about 15 minutes. They reported that the weather station reported no balloons or aircraft, nothing on radar, no aircraft inbound or outbound. So I got that notification. And then within the following day or two, me and the other witnesses wrote statements. We prepared a report, and then we filed all that information. I mean, we've been talking about this for 20 years. We don't know what we saw. What we saw changed our lives and the way we think about everything. It was incredibly profound. The object I saw, I don't even know if it was an object. It was a light. It was an orb. It didn't look like a craft, but it did look solid. And that's what we talk about. We noticed the object, and this was a pattern across all the encounters. Someone would see a light. They would pay attention to the light. And then the object responds. It performs for you. And then they come down and they investigate you. So it's almost like they're curious. So that's the thing we primarily talk about. Why did it come after we noticed it? Maybe it noticed us after we noticed it. These are people I've worked with for years, deployed with. I was in some of the weddings. These are people that I worked with every day of my life. Usually when the events were occurring, we were all together. There'd be 40, 60, 100 people on duty during these encounters.
Really?
Yeah.
All seeing it at the same time?
Yes, these encounters were playing out while we were on duty, and we were responding and investigating in real time as they occurred. 2 square objects were at least as large as a football field. The second encounter, they think it was much larger than a football field. We're talking like flying buildings. The object I saw was about 30 feet in diameter.
And
which
to
is
confirm, you were
large.
not the only person that saw this.
Correct.
I think I was also told that there was also reports of this in a police blotter in the area. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original event and turned into Arrow and the FBI.
Mr. Nuccetelli honorably served 16 years as a military police officer. He's highly credible. He had the wherewithal to collect a copy of his police report after the incident that he witnessed. They apparently destroy those records after 3 years, but he was able to maintain his this entire time and present it as evidence to his encounter. And only about a month after this hearing, another witness came forward to back up these accounts, a fellow veteran who was also stationed at Vandenberg and worked with Jeff. Of course, there are others. Most people don't want to come out and put themselves out there like this. There's just too much stigma and harassment. But the stigma is waning, and more people are coming forward. Example being our next witness. He's actually still an active duty sailor, and they gave him the green light to proceed with his witness account. That's mind-blowing. The Navy is letting him. It just feels like more and more is being allowed to come out, almost in a slow drip type of fashion, in order to try and get people eased into this reality. I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say.
And members of the task force and the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Alexandro Wiggins. I'm an active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist Senior Chief Petty Officer, father of 3, and dedicated American testifying today in my personal capacity. The views I share are my own, and I do not represent the official positions of the Department of the Navy or any subordinate organization. On the evening of February 15th, 2023, at approximately 19:15 PST, in the Whiskey 291 warning area off the coast of Southern California, I was serving on board USS Jackson. During that period, I moved between the Interior Communications Center, ICC-1, and the bridge wing, correlating the sensor picture with visual observations, part of my routine responsibilities for surface and air picture management. What I observed and what our crew recorded was not consistent with conventional aircraft or drones as they appear on our system. A self-luminous tic-tac shaped object emerged from the ocean before linking up with 3 other similar objects. The 4 then disappeared simultaneously with a high synchronized near instantaneous acceleration. I observed no sonic boom and no conventional propulsion signatures, no exhaust plume, no control surface articulation on the Sapphire image system. Shortly after the synchronized departure, radar tracks dropped. These observations were multi-sensor and recorded inside of ICC-1 with time location overlay visible in our source frames that have been made public by journalists. From my experience operating in this region over many years and consistent with our public characterized encounters, unidentified objects reoccur in United States operation areas off Southern California. My first thoughts were, I think everything that I was told and taught as a kid and as growing adult no longer, was applicable. If I'm able to see something that I thought defies gravity in such a way, then what else could be possible? That was my first thought.
So, Chief Wiggins, based on your training and operational experience, could the behavior that you witnessed, a transmedium object vanishing without a sound, be explained by any known technology that we possess or other governments possess?
It cannot. So the encounter itself, from the time I recognized on my radar to the time after the video ends, was probably about 5 to 7 minutes.
What speed was the object moving at?
When I first witnessed off the port bridge wing the object moving out of the water, what I thought was originally just a light on the water, something on the horizon, and surfacing and going into the air. I then knew it was an air contact, but as an air controller myself, I started thinking and going through kind of like my checklist in my mind. Could it be a helo? But it's not blinking lights. So I then realized this is something I've never seen before. So the speed itself, just going from the horizon to about maybe 3,000 to 4,000 feet in the air, was very slow, slowly rising. And then it sped up. I'm not an expert at knowing specific speeds of aircraft just by visual eye, but I would say probably 1-2 Mach instantly into the rest of the formation. I didn't notice visually with my own eyes the other 3 objects until I went back to my radar and also utilized Sapphire to see that, in fact, there were 4 total. And then again, when they all left after a certain amount of time, it was nearly instantaneous.
So you spotted it visually first, Chief, and then went back to your radar, or did you guys spot it on radar first?
Radar first, because that was my watch station.
And then you went out to the port bridge wing, is that correct?
Correct, to verify what I saw on my radar.
What range was it at, Chief, when you were able to see it visibly?
I would say about 7 nautical miles, 7 to 8 nautical miles of a light from the ship.
You call it the VVSS team.
Yeah, like 22,000 feet.
That shit took off earlier.
That last clip was Mr. Wiggins' voice. It was part of the situation he witnessed. He goes into even greater detail about the events of that day during an interview I have linked under his name in the description below. Definitely worth checking out. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is an active duty sailor who is testifying under oath at risk of perjury and prison if he lies. Okay, next up is Mr. George Knapp. Oh man, I could spend hours on this guy. He's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of investigative journalists on this topic. He's been around for decades and has broken multiple bombshell stories that have been validated more and more as time goes by. It's just bonkers to me that this isn't being covered more. Now, I tried to keep this as short as possible. He shares other stories and accounts in the full hearing video, even explaining one of his more popular accounts when he visited Russia in 1996 after the Soviet Union broke up and before Putin took power, which is a narrow window when things were more open over there. He was able to connect with scientists and government officials who provided him with documents and shared so many amazing accounts of UAP experiences. He submitted a huge package to Congress about this trip with so many details. The floor is yours, George.
I think you got to unleash the dogs and go track down the money and where it goes, because a lot of this stuff has been moved out of government. Sure. As you know, Rep. Burchett, it's been given to private contractors who've stashed it away. They've had it for so long that there's nobody left inside government, or very few, who know where it is.
And they do that to keep us from FOIA, correct?
Yeah, it's to keep it from FOIA. And I think that the contractors who've had this stuff for a very long time set their own standards about who is allowed to know what. And it's a very small group that ever cracks that. I think Representative Luna has been looking at the use of classifications to hide things. I'm not sure that even this committee getting security clearances that should allow you to see this stuff would allow you to follow where it really goes.
This was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. That you cannot see that drone, and so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does. This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. So, Mr. Knapp, have you heard about events like this occurring? And what information might you have?
I have heard about events like this. I have heard about this event. Jeremy Corbell and I talked about it in one of our episodes a while back. We did not have the video, though. There are servers where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public hasn't been allowed to see. Occasionally, some of that stuff gets out in the wild, and it comes our way. It should be going to you. The public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah, what the hell is that? What
Again,
like that?
again, I'm not going to speculate what it is, but the question is, why are we being blocked from this information?
I think there's probably multiple reasons. At the start, when these things first started invading our skies in large numbers, we were scared. It was right after World War II, and we didn't know what they were, and they didn't want to panic the public, and that was probably a good call. Over time, I think the lying sort of became institutionalized, Flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on radar, jets are chased after these objects, and then we get an explanation it was a temperature inversion. And those kind of lies have been told for a long time. What was told to me by an investigator from Congress, a guy named Richard D'Amato, who was sent after this story by Robert Byrd and Harry Reid, he came out to Nevada, tried to get into Area 51, did get in there, looked around, talked to people, trying to get to the bottom of it. He believed that this program, reverse engineering, et cetera, was had been moved inside these corporations. And he said, when this comes out, people are going to go to prison. And he meant people who were basically misusing legitimate national security funds, tens of billions of dollars, in order to keep this cover-up going. I also believe there's a legitimate reason for the cover-up in that there is undeniable connection of national security involved in this technology. If we are racing for it to master that technology against the Russians and the Chinese, which is what I have been told by Senator Reid and many others, then it is a race that's critical to our survival. There could be a form of disclosure, I think. Yes, it's real, it's from somewhere else, without revealing all the details that would allow someone else to have an advantage in the race for this technology. Well, one of them was named Dr. James Ryder at Lockheed. But again, to emphasize, I don't fault these contractors for doing what they were asked to do by our government. They're supposed to lie if people ask about it. And the intelligence agencies who gave this stuff to them, CIA, I think primarily, told them to keep it quiet, and they've done that. And I suspect that they'd like an off-ramp, that they'd like some help with figuring out this technology at some point. As I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, what hooked me on the story was the paper trail, these documents that shouldn't exist. We've been told for decades, over and over, there's nothing to it. It's not a threat. You can go about your business. And then when FOIA becomes the law of the land, thousands of pages to the contrary leak out. There's a memo by General Nathan Twining in 1947 when the country was being overflown by dozens of UFOs, hundreds of UFOs, in which he said, look, this is not visionary or fictitious, it's real. These things are craft. They're not ours. They outperform anything we've got. I mean, if you follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that FOIA really exists and changed their tune and not put things in writing, it spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention, Representative Burleson, is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs. And they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't, and the Russians didn't either.
And I've got to
I'm telling you, this guy is a wealth of knowledge. I wanted to include these segments because they highlight the depth of the secrecy that's been going on for decades. It's not just George making these accusations. More and more people are coming forward to tell us that our government is hiding stuff and we need to advocate for more transparency. The government has compartmentalized this information to make it difficult to track, and they've sold off contracts to private corporations, such as Lockheed Martin, for example. And then that way, they can be shielded from the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, which is meant to allow citizens to request information from the government to which we pay for. Okay, to our last witness. This was the new surprise witness. See, the previous guys were already known and had recently shared their stories earlier this year in 2025. But Mr. Borland made his first public appearance under oath, subject to the penalty of perjury and prison. In his interviews linked below, he definitely is able to go much more in depth about his situation and his entire story. It's definitely worth a listen. I feel like this guy has to have been trying to do the right thing. It really doesn't seem like he necessarily wanted to be public, but it sounds like his back was against the wall and he just finally had enough. Let's listen to his story.
Good morning, members of the task force and the committee. I would like to express my gratitude for being invited to testify to the current task force created under the People's Chamber and the American public. As an American citizen, veteran, and intelligence community professional, it is an honor and a privilege to serve under oath before you on behalf of our country. I speak for myself and no former agency or company I have been previously affiliated with. My name is Dylan Borland, a former 1N1 geospatial intelligence specialist for the United States Air Force in an active duty enlisted capacity from 2010 to 2013. I've also been employed with BAE Systems and Intrepid Solutions as a senior analyst, expert in analyzing video, radar, and advanced electro-optical imagery for official identification of aerial order of battle as well as naval and ground order of battle. I'm a federal whistleblower, having testified to both the ICIG and ARROW with direct firsthand knowledge of and experience with craft and technologies that are not ours and are reportedly operating without congressional oversight. Because of my direct knowledge of the reality of certain legacy UAP programs, my professional career was deliberately obstructed, and I have endured sustained reprisals from government agencies for over a decade. From 2011 to 2013, I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, conducting 24-hour operations via manned and unmanned aerial vehicles for Special Operations Forces in the global war on terror. During the summer of 2012, my team was on standby for weather, and I returned to my barracks on base, and at approximately 01:30, I saw an approximately 100-foot equilateral triangle take off from near the NASA hangar on the base. The craft interfered with my telephone, did not have any sound, and the material it was made of appeared fluid or dynamic. I was under this triangular craft for a few minutes, and then it rapidly ascended to commercial jet level in seconds, displaying zero kinetic disturbance, sound, or wind displacement. Some years after that experience, I was further exposed to classified information from the UAP legacy crash retrieval program through a sensitive position I held within a special access program. During this time, intelligence officers approached me in fear for their own careers, citing misconduct within these programs and similar retaliation that I was already enduring at this time. These issues include medical malpractice committed by Veterans Affairs staff, denial of work I performed while enlisted in the United States Air Force, forged and manipulated employment documents, workplace harassment, including colleagues being directed to not speak with me, manipulation of my security clearance by certain agencies, blocking, delaying, and ultimately removing my ability to be employed within the IC. The retaliation I face and the retaliation against individuals I know who worked in these programs is what convinced me in March 2023 to become a whistleblower. I came forward out of concern for people's lives and to ensure I did everything I could to let our elected representatives know the truth about what is really happening in the executive branch. At the end of March 2023, I agreed to meet with AARO following the suggestion of other federal officials believing it was what our nation required of me. I had reservations with AARO due to assessments they were reporting publicly at the time as a misrepresentation of the truth. Because of these concerns, I did not share sources and methods information in order to protect current and former federal personnel who had firsthand exposure to technologies of unknown origin. I did not want anyone to face further retaliation beyond what they had already endured. And unfortunately, a staff member ended up getting in some trouble because of that. After David Grush testified under oath in the summer of 2023 and provided historic disclosure, I was then asked to go to the ICIG and did so in August 2023. It was very clear early on during my intake interview, which was video recorded under oath, that the objective was to solely assess how much I know and not move forward with an investigation with new information I provided them. The aftermath of that IG complaint still troubles me to this day. Since my ICIG complaint, I've been prevented from resuming prior employment and can confirm I'm still blacklisted from certain agencies within the intelligence community. In addition, multiple agencies attempted phishing attacks to assess what I had divulged to the Inspector General, including being asked to disclose details of my ICIG complaint during a CI polygraph for a position unrelated to UFO UAP matters as recently as November 2024. As I sit before you today, I and many other whistleblowers have no job prospects, no foreseeable professional future, and a nation every single one of us came forward to defend. Numerous individuals have come forward in various ways to reveal the truth of the UAP reality as patriots and defenders of our nation. Yet many feel discarded, isolated, hopeless, separated from the country they serve. Efforts to rectify this situation for all whistleblowers have been difficult and troubling. And to my fellow whistleblowers and officials who know this information, I offer you my apology, something that I have never gotten, and I'm giving it to you. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, an oath that demands truth and transparency for our democratic republic to function. Each day, these truths remain hidden from our citizens. Humanity drifts further from the principles our nation was founded to uphold. Each day, victims of crimes committed by agencies and companies maintaining this secrecy are denied justice is another day our Constitution is shredded. In 2023, Patriots provided this committee and the executive branch with undeniable proof of the UAP reality, and I commend your continued commitment. The future of humanity is one which we either travel to the stars or regress to the Stone Age with this technology. My career has been to deliver critical information to decision makers. Your role as elected by your representatives is to act on it. The time to act is now. Thank you. So on the base, I lived in the barracks. There was a little smoke pit outside. I was there on the telephone and looking across to the flight line, and I see a white light pop up and stop about 100 feet in the air. I thought it was a weather balloon. I've seen tests from there before, weeknight, normal thing, not surprising. I actually finished my cigarette and I began walking up towards the flight line. There is a track, and because I was on 3 months of night work, I would walk the track at night when we were weather down. And as I began walking towards the light, towards the flight line and the track, the light then flies across the base, across the flight line, and as it flies to me, a triangle manifests around the light. I can't tell you if it's active camouflage. I can't tell you if it appeared around the light, but I can tell you that it was a white light and then it was a triangle. It stopped about 100 feet in front of me and approximately 100 feet above me. My telephone got extremely hot, completely froze, dead. I remember how thick it was. It was between 1 to 2 stories thick, equilateral triangle. I could never see the top of it, and the edges were 90 degrees. There were 4 lights in total, 1 light on each corner and a larger light in the center, 2 to 3 times the size of the corner lights. But what was really odd was the outside. The best way to describe it is like looking at a James Webb telescope picture where you have the colors and then the black background. So the craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft. I'm under this for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then the center light flashes 2 to 3 times, no sound, immediately shoots up to commercial jet level minimum, in my opinion, and I immediately feel static electricity all over my body, and then I smell the smell of after a thunderstorm or lightning storm, that really strong summer thunderstorm smell. Gets up to flight level. I'm trying to get my phone reset, and I can only see the center light at this point. If I didn't actually see it take off, I would have thought it was a star. And then it hovers up there, and it begins to slowly move due east out over the Atlantic Ocean. I finally got my phone reset. The entire thing was about, from the time I saw the light pop up near the hangar until it took off out over the ocean, was about 15 minutes.
What did you do next? Like, what was your next step after it had passed and you were done?
I actually kind of laughed to myself and said, okay, so this exists as well. Worked in enough programs, been exposed to enough that I was like, okay, so this is a real thing. I went back, walked the track, talked with a couple of my friends about it. I did talk with some of my coworkers, one in particular, which I thought was a joke, and it definitely wasn't, was like, you probably should never say this to anybody. And then what happened to me happened. So.
Okay, that was a lot. If you're not very familiar with this topic, there is a ton to sift through there. There's so many little details that are really hard to pick up if you're not very familiar. Again, his story is actually very compressed in these clips. He goes into much more depth in his interviews. Along with his military experience, he's worked for companies that are accused of being involved with secret special access programs. He referenced that. But let's just stick with his eyewitness account for now, okay? He, along with the other 2 firsthand witnesses, are reporting that they are seeing amazing, anomalous craft in the skies on military bases and while out on missions. The witnesses keep coming forward, folks. The time is now to take this seriously and press our representatives to investigate these claims. Protect whistleblowers. That way more will feel comfortable to come forward. And that way more will ultimately be revealed so we can learn about these amazing truths that have been kept secret from the public for far too long. The implications are paradigm shifting. They can improve humanity almost immediately. My personal belief is that there is some sort of plan in place to slowly drip this information out. I think they want to ease it in so people can slowly digest the actual reality that's been hidden from us. What do you think? Thank you for spending this time with me today. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment, share on your social media. It's quick and free, and it really helps the algorithm for the channel, as well as spread the word about our crazy reality. And as Odin always says, make sure you check out our other videos if you haven't already. That way you can catch up and be better informed. Thank you again. Sending good vibes. Enjoy the journey.